Welcome to the Wisdom Reclaimed podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern life. I'm your host, Layla Sahar, Ayurvedic practitioner, coach, and intuitive, here to support you in awakening the healer within. What if the answers you've been searching for have been with you all along, carried in the timeless practices of ancient rituals, connecting with nature, and pathways of the heart? Here we'll explore how to take responsibility for your life, trust your intuition, and rediscover the wisdom that's always been within you. Welcome to the Wisdom Reclaimed podcast. My name is Layla, and I'm here with the beautiful Alexandra Lia. And she does not just explore intelligence, she architects emergence. A regenerative thought leader, cinematic storyteller, and multi-dimensional researcher, Alexandra is shaping the future of intelligence, consciousness, and human evolution. I'm so happy to have you here. It's such a blessing. Welcome to the show, Alexandra. So I met Alexandra just like a week ago at an event, and her wisdom and her knowledge and her femininity and her grace just blew me away. So I couldn't wait to have her on the podcast. Just to begin, I'm curious if you can share with us, as a explorer of intelligence and an architect of intelligence, what took you to that field? Because I think a lot of us think we know intelligence. It's something that we talk about a lot, but I feel like there's not many people that really delve into the specifics and to the hidden aspects of intelligence. And I'm curious, like, what took you there? And yeah, if you could share a little bit about that.
It is such a deep, deep honor and a privilege to be here, to be part of your wonderful gift that you create to this world by accumulating different aspects of wisdom and to share this so generously. I feel just very alive right now and serene at the same time. And the moment I saw you at a beautiful festivity, you were on stage. You literally graced the whole space and everyone there with the delicate, pure being that you are. And you allowed us to understand deeper and here comes the word, intelligence of flowers, of living entities, what we can learn from them, how we can connect to them. And I was just so enriched and in awe. And I'm sorry you guys for not having been there. I hope you get to experience her on stage, alive, transmitting her art and her wisdom and her knowledge together with Ayurvedic practices. It was a living transmission. And what you did for me and all of us there is you weaved in the body, mind, soul triad deeper capacities to bridge us with the living entities that is the flowers in a way that I've not experienced it before. And the people who showed up that day, all of us were forever changed because of your transmission and your offerage and the way you weave meaning with knowledge and impact. That is so profound. So thank you for having me here. What got me to this unraveling and research when it comes to intelligence is I can start unraveling that story as in a twofold kind of code. One code is that I believe to be true, that I found to be true. What we need most, we teach best. And the other code is consciousness informs itself through itself. And if we break down the word inform, there is the aspect of form, something that has form or is inserting a form within a system. And for me, that occurred when my perception and my understanding of reality was so shattered and so broken. That's many years ago. I was a student back then. I was living in London and a young woman. And I experienced a very life-threatening traumatic experience that made my mind and my spirit not feel safe within my physical vessel, my being, my body. And so there was, I wouldn't say a complete split, but there was a schism that occurred. And it took me 2.5 to 3 years to come back to this body. It was literally kind of launched into a different, unbeknownst to me, into a different system of intelligence, different levels of consciousness, if you want, different dimensions that I was not briefed or educated toward initially as to how to navigate through that. And so that led me into a very deep need to restore this schism. And I first, with my parents, I have very, very, very loving parents who did everything in their power and their might to heal their daughter who was suffering. She was suffering. I was suffering because I was literally not present here and I was elsewhere. For me to be able to say this now, what truly happened, looking back, is because it took me many years to understand the different aspects of intelligence, to understand the different realms of consciousness, and to heal myself in a capacity that allowed me to create a new narrative of what happened, why it happened, and to leverage, to honor, so to say, the wisdom extracted from that very harsh experience. So my parents helped me to navigate through that with the Western approach, which was, with practitioners of neurology, of psychiatry, with even institutions that were focused on that, and a lot of medicine to help me not have, quote unquote, the expressions of how they rated a mental illness, but they would not go to the root. And what I was perceiving, no one else was perceiving. So it was I felt like a double agent. I had to navigate all the aspects that I was seeing and experiencing whilst not showing what was truly happening to me, to not be defined as a crazy person or ridiculed. And also having this deep yearning of wanting to feel safe, not being able to feel safe, but not having anybody to being able to support me or guide me through that process. So the first 1.5 years was the whole Western approach, which did not take. And I'm grateful to have made that experience now. For me, this applies and this is true. This is not to say about how anybody else is to engage in that journey. This is just what applies to me to be true. And I was very fortunate because my parents started at some point in our home calling in different practitioners, different members of indigenous tribes from all around the world. And I got to a point upon their arrival, they didn't come all together at the same time. They came over a period of weeks and months. But my journey before that, during the whole navigating the Western approach, made me so bitter and made me so cynical that I had my guards up and I didn't want to initially ask for help. So I was protecting myself and I was implementing a blockchain, so to say. I told myself, if the people coming have the capacity to communicate with me in a nonverbal way, then I know that they can truly understand and see. And so they did. They truly, I was thinking of a specific sentence in my mind. I say, if they can pronounce it verbatim, then I know that's how I can trust them. And they did. And that was the beginning of my actual initiation, my actual also healing. But whilst healing me, and we go back to the beginning of my sharing earlier, what you need most, you teach best. So an understanding that there is so many other aspects to this reality that luckily, quantum physics begins now to touch upon, begins now to awaken to, and learning how to navigate through that and learning how to summon, quote unquote, all my, if you want to call it this way, dispersed pieces into wholeness. That has given me the organic and the metaphysical and the intelligent framework to be able to hold space and facilitate other people's journeys, but also to understand through that experience that whatever I experienced was just a mirroring of what this world is experiencing. So I understood that, and that gave me also clarity as to why this had happened. It gave me a seat at the table, and it allowed me to partake in a very conscious whole becoming from where we are as a planet, where we are as humanity, and to wanting to be present, willing, co-steward along with other co-stewards on this journey of the trajectory of human life and the world as it is right now and as it is becoming. Thank you for listening so presently.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was such a rich share. So many things, came up as you were talking that I feel like we could go down so many paths from, right? Like, so your experience, which was this traumatic experience that had you fractured, right? And so from that understanding, what is the underlying intelligence that is guiding your life, right? And I think that's the realization or the discovery that you went down to understand, okay, right? To get the wisdom from this experience, there must have been a guiding force, a guiding intelligence that underlies all of life, including my own, that guides every experience that happens on this planet. And then that guiding intelligence also bringing you back into wholeness, right? So that was, and you know, your story is just so powerful because I feel like you've experienced the array of the hero's journey, right? Of like really going to rock bottom, and all of us have our own version of this, right? So, you know, I have my version, you have your version, and each one has its particular quality that is attuned and aligned with your soul and what you're here to do, right? And I love what you said, that it's like what you need the most, you teach the best. And some of us resist that. Right. And I would love to hear you speak on like, what is the important, because I can just for myself, I'm like, there are certain things that I need the most, but I'm like, I don't know if I can teach that, you know, and there's maybe a bit of resistance of like, am I the one that's supposed to be teaching, like me, you know? So, and I know that you know, probably have gone down this journey for yourself. I would love for you to share the importance of us, you know, teaching what we need the most to others.
Thank you for receiving this so graciously and so wholeheartedly. I would say we teach best what we needed most and what we continue to need in terms of in our hero's journey when we are within the aspect of death. Death is a shattering, and for everybody who was not here, you said something so profound in your ceremony during the Persian Nowruz and the spring equinox, how important it is how important and vital death is, not for the complete annihilation of life, but for the closure of a cycle so that a new one can emerge. It is exactly, in my understanding, that very, very sweet spot of having undergone a symbolical death of what you held to be true, of perhaps constraining belief systems and if there is a pain related to that, if we were to consider it not in a negative way, but if we were to consider it that your body, the intelligence of our body, who is like a living library of everything that has ever happened to you, but also a living library and a guardian of whatever you make this to mean for you, then the struggle and the pain allows us later on, when we get to give ourselves permission to teach that or to mirror that to someone else going through a similar journey. I think it has a twofold honey to it, if you want. One being that it has forever humbled you. And as beautiful as the notion of sovereignty is, I think true sovereignty comes from also being perpendicularly aligned to honest and grounded humility and understanding that so much can come through you, but also how small we are in the aspect of the infinite, right? And the other aspect that would come through that allows that the pain and the struggle and the death and the rebirth attached to that in itself, I feel that it allows us to later on, whoever we get to meet who is in a similar trajectory, let it be systems, let it be organizations, let it be groups, or just singular beings, because this information is forever encoded in your system. You get to become a bridge for that other person in truly being seen and in activating perhaps dormant code within that other person. I hope this clarifies your beautiful question.
It does. That brings up in me kind of, one of my teachers always says that it's not what we say or what we do that heals people, but it's actually our consciousness that changes people. And it feels like, you know, because of the things that we've been through and because, you know, we just by virtue of us shifting and evolving our own consciousness based on what we've experienced, based on our willingness, right, to go down that hero's journey, that end result is when I'm in front of someone. And this happened to me the other day. It's like I said something and somebody else who has a whole different consciousness will say the same thing and it will not hit them in the same way. And literally somebody came up to me and after an event and said, you know, this is the thing my aunt has been telling me over and over, but you know, there's a way that you said it that hit me, and I didn't share this with this person, but it's like, yeah, it's because my consciousness resonated with you at a certain level and shifted you. And what a beautiful thing and a beautiful gift. And maybe this takes me into my next question, which is about the feminine, right? Because I feel like this is the nature of the feminine, to just be, right? She just is. And the question I have for you is, we are currently living in a very masculine dominated world where a lot of women have lost touch with this feminine aspect. And I'm curious what you think of, or what you think the role is of this feminine grace in our world today.
The way I observe the current zeitgeist is we are literally going through, here it is again, symbolically through this death where very old, persisting, imbalanced systems get to dissolve. And in that dissolution, there's also disillusionment going on. And that's why maybe many people are kind of in a fear or uncertainty. It's because truly what is to come is not written yet. It awaits us, all of us, to co-weave new meaning, wholesome values together. And I think this is also why right now, and this is what your magnificent podcast is all about, and what my work is all about as well, my research and everything I hold to be true and I care to share. I believe that right now, because of dissolution of old, unhealthy, imbalanced systems, we are being given an extension across times from eons that were existing within a balanced way. And this is coming through the intelligence of nature. This is coming through the intelligence within ourselves and with how we align with the non-physical, non-linear, time-bound aspect of us. This is to come from every information that lies within our DNA, where our ancestors get to speak through us. There is a very, very sacred, potent time right now where ancient intelligence, ancestral intelligence, is weaving and informing our wholesome future, ideally, through that bridge into a more conscious way of living and coexisting with all that is. There is, from my understanding, and there's actually 2 books I'm currently writing, one having to do with the exploration and the coherence between different intelligent systems. The other one is a framework, to the best of my abilities, exploring what is the healthy masculine, what is the healthy feminine, but not bound to genders necessarily, as a framework that can be applied and can be seen from in any system, in any country, in any aspect of creation, and also within us, right? The system still at play in dissolving that I see, yes, it has been devoid of the sacred feminine within systems, political systems, geographical systems, family structures and narratives, but it's indeed re-emerging. And I hope that my words don't only touch and activate the sacred femininity within a woman listening, but also within a man. It is our capacity to connect with the wisdom inside of us that is non-linear, that is subtle and yet so profound, that is not logical but intuitive, that is based on values of empathy, connectivity, that is the magic, if you want, the magical flame within, that would be the ideal situation, within a healthy structure. For me, the masculine aspect of all creation is the one that offers a form and ideally a consistency and a support so that the feminine aspect can begin to blossom and align. And both require each other. But if, and I'm gonna, even though I didn't want to go into genders, but just to exemplify what it would mean in family aspects or in relationships or within us. Let's say a woman is raising a son and she unfortunately has not come in contact with the sacred feminine within her, or she was raised in a system that did not nurture that. Most probably, unfortunately, the way she may raise a son will be devoid of that sacred encoding, of that value system and that quality. And so the son then is not necessarily whole within his feminine and masculine aspects. The son may be devoid of or afraid of or suppressing anything that he cannot logically explain or control, or that can be seen and reflected in an outside scope outside of him. And so he will gravitate to a woman who most probably will be a representation of the imbalance of his mother. Equally for her, if she, let's say, quote unquote, begins to awaken, begins to allow that sacred feminine to blossom and to emerge. I think the best way for her to be able to do that, even if she's with a man who's not understood how he can meet her at that level, or he can support her in that level, he may actually be afraid of that, is if she understands every time in a disconnected system, disconnected from the feminine grace, disconnected from nature, disconnected from wisdom, every time within the structured aspect of her life, she may have been suppressed, to go back in her life, to heal that, to reframe that, to understand how to forgive that, because then her inner feminine takes agency of how and why she came into this life, and how she can literally shift that paradigm. And by doing so, it's important for us to also look into our ancestry. How did the mothers, how did the fathers, the forefathers, the foremothers connect with themselves, connect with nature, connect with each other, connect with their parents? It's a very, very, very interesting way for me to explore how certain imbalances were passed on, and then also manifested, mirrored within surroundings, environments, systems, and also political decision makings. And for example, you have countries that are very dominant in the structural aspect, but kind of devoid of the magical aspect. Those are countries to me which have very harsh legislations, very specific rules. People growing up within set structures are abiding by these rules, but there's not so much play, there's not so much tolerance. And then you have the juxtaposition, countries that, or cultures that are so potent, so rich in the feminine aspect, that is music, that is connectivity, that is heart-to-heart engagement, that is warmth, but may be in need of a healthy framework and a structure to hone that, foster that without diluting that essence. And if it's too much of that essence, too much of the feminine aspect without structure, then you also have cultures or family dynamics that may be devoid of healthy boundaries. Or codes of integrity, because things become, quote unquote, for the lack of a better word, wishy-washy. So in my understanding, one needs the other in a most wholesome way, because one feeds each other, and then you have a spiral that emerges out of that is exponentially growing. And I think the seeding of that is happening right now. And everyone who feels something in this transmission right now, I hope that you are stepping forward, stepping first and foremost inward, and stepping forward in understanding and giving yourself permission that your journey, your pain, your struggle, that of you, that of your ancestors, that of your relationships, that of your parents, that of your political environments, is not coincidental. It informed you to step into the conscious being, to birth and to offer whatever only you can gift this world with. We really need you. I'm not being poetic right now. We really need you. And so to come back to the other very intelligent questions that you asked, is to, when we say, who, me? I think that in itself is so noble and so beautiful, because it shows me that you come from a place of humility, but also it may be the last remnants of believing, or having at some point believed in whatever fragmented the sovereign aspect of you or of your forefathers and foremothers, but will ultimately, by giving yourself the permission to crown yourself in the sovereignty of your wholeness and in the sacredness of the importance of your existence right now, to come from an angle of, if not you, if not because of you, who will be devoid of the messages you get to bring, or the seeds you get to plant here.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. It was just so rich and beautiful and so eloquent. I love what you said. If not you, then who? And we're definitely on the same wavelength, because the fact that we were born into this body, into this lineage, and had the experience that we did are not by accident, right? I truly believe that. And that is the greater intelligence, right? That is moving through us. I was listening to this clip of, I think, Dr. Zach Bush, I think his name is. Yes, he's amazing. But he was talking about the science of the soul, right? And in the womb, that, you know, scientists don't actually know what the soul is, but they're just beginning, like you said, quantum physics is just beginning to understand. And he was saying that there's no blueprint in the mother's womb bloom of how the body is going to look. Like there's just no blueprint of that. It's the energetic frequency of the soul that comes in that decides literally how our body will look, right? It's the soul's desire to come in, to look a certain way, to have certain personality traits, to have certain experiences for its soul evolution, and to share its wisdom in its unique voice. And what I was sharing about the flowers that we can learn from the plant kingdom is that each flower is thrilled to bloom as its own, right? A tulip is not trying to be a rose, and a rose is not trying to be a violet. They're each being what they are at their core, what their essence is. And so, I love what you shared about this balance of the masculine and the feminine, of the masculine being form and the feminine kind of being this flow, and how they both need each other, because obviously spirituality is on the rise, right? These metaphysical concepts are on the rise. And sometimes we simplify them too much, where we're like, oh, there's too much masculine, we need to go all feminine. And that's not necessarily the case. And what you were sharing, it's like we actually need both, and they're both really important, and they're both important for every person, right? To understand what that is and what that looks like, what a young boy's feminine is versus his masculine, what a young girl's masculine is versus her feminine. And a lot of our confusion is because there has been a wounding in one or the other, right? And so I would love to kind of weave this into the plant kingdom and see perhaps like what we can learn maybe from the trees. I know you're from Greece, and there's a huge significance of land and earth within Greece, and specifically the olive tree. And I'm wondering if there are aspects that humans can really learn from these beautiful beings.
I love that we get to quote unquote impregnate each other and cross pollinate, not pollute, cross pollinate each other's perceptions. And I already feel so enriched, and it's just like a weaving. I think because I feel so safe, and you've structured this so beautifully, the feminine aspect of us, the flow and tapping into other things that we didn't aforemention when preparing for this transmission is arising. And that's such a beautiful testament to your brilliance. Yes, so my heritage is Greek. I come from Greece, and the reason I'm currently in the US is to research and to show ways of how we as human beings can connect to the intelligence and the love and the support of olive trees. Olive trees, as many of you may know, are very ancient beings. And from my understanding, what allows them to be and exist for many centuries, sometimes even millennia, is their capacity to be both so well rooted, but also so resilient to harsh weather patterns, very strong winds, and to be in a way also very deeply connected to the sun. For me, anytime I eat or I drink olive oil, literally, like my brain regards that I'm eating liquefied sunbeams, but enriched with the soil. So it's a very sacred, if we regard the soil, the earth as a mother aspect, and the sun, the giving force, as a father aspect, then all their unisons is literally their sacred marriage, if you want. And whilst eating that olive oil or drinking it, I literally feel like the sunbeams are enriching me, all the information within those sunbeams that took so long to be sent from the sun into the soil, informing the olive tree that has been a witness across time spans of humanity and everything else that is alive and was alive during that time. The minerals it needed, the potency of the air, of the oxygen, and everything else that I may personally not even be aware of, but I'm unraveling what I get to be aware of, is basically a song. And what you said earlier as well about the beauty of what happens within the womb during a pregnancy, what happens to the arrival of a being. You reminded me of a tribe in Africa. I think they are the Dogon tribe, but please do your own research. There is a tribe in Africa that understands the power of frequency, the power of what it may not be visible to us, that is sound, that is a carrier of information, a carrier of vibration, a carrier of codes, if you want. And what they do is when a woman understands that it's her time in her life to conceive a child, she will go to a forest of a nearby village and she will meditate, pray, connect with herself, connect with the body, empty her mind. And she'll start hearing within her a melody. That melody, as I was told, is the unique frequency blueprint of her child to be. It's a song of that existence. And so when she in her physical earth aspect receives that, and then she goes back to the village, she shares that sound, that information, that code of song, of melody with her partner. And during her pregnancy, she gets with her partner to sing or hum it along so that they offer an anchorage of the arrival of that child. And then during the time when the child is being born, is literally coming into this physical experience here, for the body, mind, soul complex entity to be aligned, they have shared its song, its melody with the whole village, and then the village is singing it. So it's a welcoming doula comedy by the whole village acting as one field to embed the arrival of that being. And later on, when that birth child grows up and enters a matrimony or a sacred union with another person, their village is singing both of their melodies. And that's what I'm currently so fascinated about, is how ancient intelligence, but also how sound, song, frequency, and melody are basically embedded everywhere in nature, even with honey. Would you like to share us something about your understanding of honey?
Wow. There's so much. I want to go further with that one, because sound and frequency, it is what our universe is made up of, right? And so quantum mechanics has, the ancient sages of India knew this. The ancient sages of many countries knew that sound and vibration makes up the entire world, right? But it makes up the soul. And like the soul song that you talk about, actually in core shamanism, which is a practice that I do, we have soul songs that come to us, and that's what we sing to gain power. Actually, when we do journeys into the unseen realms, is that we sing our soul song as preparation for that. And so that really resonates what you shared about the tribe, that how amazing is it that everybody is attuned to these ancient practices, that a soul comes in knowing their soul song and never forgets it. Right? They know it throughout their lives, and how that helps that individual soul play their role in this grand symphony, right? Helps them blossom into what they are meant to blossom. So there's not this process of forgetting that happens a lot in our Western cultures and our other cultures as well. Even the Eastern ones who still have those ancient traditions, many of the population are not aware or still practicing it. So a lot of that is lost. And we have people who don't know why they're here, right? Don't know what their soul song is or what their purpose is. And just like, what a sweet practice. So I just wanted to share that, and just plant that seed, that question of what would our world look like if all of us had our soul song? What do you think that would look like? But to go back to honey, because we can't forget about honey. Honey is used in Ayurveda and Ayurvedic medicine for many things. It is like a universal healer almost. It really is, it has this special quality that we call it, this divine quality that is unexplainable. In Ayurveda, there's a couple things that have this, honey being one of them. But my introduction to honey was actually really with the bees. And quite recently, I had an introduction to the bees. It was actually in Mexico. I was in Mexico, and there was a bee that I was having breakfast at a restaurant, and it was just around me. And there was one bee, and it was just around me. And so I knew it kind of had a message for me. It was very intuitively, right? I'm always trying to tune in to see what message life has for me. And so that happened, and that, I was like, oh, okay. That was a little seed that was planted, but I didn't think too much of it. Then I came back, and of course, in my inbox, there was a random course about dreaming with bees. And I started, and it was all about bee medicine. And it actually linked to ancient Greece and how there's the cult of the bees, the ancient, I'm not sure which goddesses were, when they're oracles, they were actually called bees, these women that were channeling messages from the divine. And so I'm curious kind of your understanding of honey, of the bees, and their importance. Yeah, in our own human evolution or in where we're going.
I'm just in awe of you, and I'm bathing in the beauty of that is you. It's wonderful. In Greek, the word for bees is melisses, and the word for future is melon. So melisses and melon, the first aspect of the word is the same, and meli is the honey. They are beings. Bees for me are beings that, first of all, they are matriarchal. That's not to take away that they don't have healthy structure in the masculine understanding. But what really astounded me in my research in some rather off-the-grid islands in Greece, where they still create honey from the ancient way, is that every beehive has its own complete identity and song. It was proven that it was measured that the humming of the bees are different from beehive to beehive. And when they hum, and I think this is, if we were to go deeper into that research, how their sonar capacity informs or weaves and offers, co-authors the nectar together with the pollen, because every hum, I feel, is basically bringing in the sonar, the vibration that you said before, into crystallized structure. So when we eat honey, we basically are enriching our system with materialized sound. Similarly as with ants, I know that bees, the moment the queen dies, no matter where they are, they won't return to the hive anymore. So that shows us literally the capacity of beehive minds, in which I wish that humanity is awakening more to, and understanding also and being shown that we have inner dormant yet, but inner technologies that would allow us to communicate with each other in a different way and coexist with each other in a different way. And for me, there should not be any allowance of trademarking or owning the patent of telepathy that some individuals are currently trying to do. So please, everyone, this is an invitation. Leverage and understand your innate dormant technologies, your capacities, your telepathic capacities. Allow the bees and the nature to truly awaken that in you and remind you of that. And what also astounded me is that honey does not go bad, ever. So imagine the intelligence and the love with which this has been created. And yeah, so many different ancient understandings revolve around the bees. I think it's because it's a beautiful representation of how to sing the song of creation or the song of manifestation into this physical realm, and how to think that one's actions, especially when aligned with a purpose, would ideally benefit the greater good, and to be aware of one's personal song as well. But in regards to your question, the oracles connected with bees, I think it's because it's a beautiful representation of the potency and the generosity of the feminine, but also of, if we were to connect with our own song, with our own melody, we would be able to understand ourselves and our trajectory from a non-linear time scope. And that's why you have melon, which is the future, meli, which is the honey, and melisses or melissa, which is the bee.
So the bees are our guide to the future, really. And it's beautiful in such a non-linear way, right? How they're teaching us in so many different forms, not only with their honey, but with their sound and with their connection. Obviously for me, it's like the connection to the flowers, right? The bees are the lovers of the flowers, right? They're mates, which is so, when I thought about it, I'm like, of course, when I looked at this, I'm like, wow, there's just so much richness. And some people even said that our humans would have not been able to evolve in the way that they did if it wasn't for honey, because honey gave us glucose in large quantities that helped us survive. So if we didn't discover this as a food, I remember one teacher, actually this course with the Dreaming with the Bees, was talking about how The reason why our brains got so big was because we had that glucose from the honey. And our brains would not have developed in the way that it did, which gives us an advantage over other species here, is all because of the bees, which is crazy when you think about it. And then when you think about the fact that if the bees weren't here, we wouldn't be here, right? None of the flowers would be pollinated. None of the vegetables would be pollinated, and we would not have our food. So they play such a big role, not only for what they produce in the honey, but actually what their role is, right? Their divine role. And each bee in the hive has its role, right? Like the worker bees and then the queen bee, and everybody knows that they're doing their role. And I think we can learn a lot from that, again, because so much of humanity, we're trying to mimic what other people are doing. And we're so, I think, afraid or just don't even know what our soul song is. And this comes back to that, that program of like little me or who, I'm just trying to write the survival, and I need to be like this person in order to survive here. The irony in it is if we actually discover our soul song, we're going to thrive higher than we have ever done before. And as a collective, right, we're going to do that. And that's what I think the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom is here to also teach us. We think we're superior in many ways. And yes, in many ways, we have our advantages, but we are that connection between the heaven and the earth. I think that's a big part of what our role is. But the consciousness in plants, I was reading this one thing that it's actually plant consciousness that has helped human consciousness evolve. Because in the indigenous traditions that have helped you heal, helped me heal, there's so much richness and there's such a connection to the plant and animal kingdom. And way before, right, thousands of years ago, it was the plants who told the elders in the village what to do, right? There was that telepathy between species. And so it's like when you talk to indigenous tribes, it's like, how did you know that this specific plant was good to treat this condition? And it's like, oh, well, the plants told me, or they showed me, right? And it's like, well, if we think about it that way, then maybe it was the plants that were guiding us into our next evolution, right? Of keeping us alive, of supporting us within their network. But I want to switch gears a little bit to water. Yes, water, because, right, we can't think about plant and plant life without water. And we often take water for granted. We're like, okay, yes, we know we're made up of water and we have to drink it to survive. But not many people think that water has consciousness, that water is alive. There have been some, scientists have done some things about water. I remember when I was in my master's program, I learned about Dr. Emoto, I think it was, right? The messages in water. But I would love to hear your perspective on the consciousness of water. If it actually has consciousness, why is that important for us to know?
Where do I begin? So for the audience, a little intro into where we just switched gears to and why, as much as for you being, at least that's how I see you, a representative of the to be discovered knowledge and wisdom and guardianship of the plant kingdom that is your outlet. Mine is the one of water. The reason being, and it brings us back to the beginning of my story, I began to reconcile with my body that, as I said before, I didn't want to be in. When being here made sense again and I could see it from a standpoint of joy. And that was not until I was immersed in waters in order to surf. I started surfing at some point years ago, and I realized that I had all those still unhealed aspects of my body, around how do I look? How does my body look like? Is it still a carrier of something very shameful that had happened to me back then in London? And a voice told me within me, if you don't paddle for you, no one will. If you are not aware of when and how to take which breaths when the wave crashes over you, there's no one to breathe for you. You may as well die. You are responsible for navigating your body, mind, soul through these waves. And the waves were both an intricate force of teaching me of how to reconcile with my body, but also how to understand limitations and how to be in utter reverence, the beauty that is nature, of the song that is creation. Every time I started learning, becoming better and better in surfing, and that happened so because I failed forward, because I crashed, because I had near-death experience in the water. I'd broken my ribs at some point. There was a lot of things, but that was looking back, those were my teachings. And they were also very beautiful teachings, but not as physically harsh. But every time I would learn along and grow and fail forward and understand the language of water, it always was adaptogenic to who I was and how this self entered into the waters. If I was imbalanced, I would literally either not catch a wave, or if I were to catch a wave, it literally would throw me right off. If I was aligned and in tune with myself and in complete reverence, there were times when I would stand on a board and I would feel like a divine hand literally allowing me to glide, so much so that I would have my water, my salty water, dropping from my eyes into the salt water of the ocean. Dr. Masaru Emoto has shown in his beautiful ways that water is a carrier and a medium of storage because it is permeable, it's not rigid, it's not exclusive, it is very inclusive to be immersed with different aspects of information. There are studies that show that water is one of the most ancient aspects there is, that it's even older than the sun itself. I haven't gotten into that research, so please don't expect me to quote right now, but this is something I'm currently fascinated about. It's like the antiquity of water, and that the same water that is in our oceans today is the water that was there eons ago. So weaving that with the understanding that water can store information and vibration, if you want. For me, the ocean, the waters, is a liquid library of everything that has ever existed. And my aim is, and I'm currently creating a film series to explore the underestimated wisdom and knowledge that water has managed to store for us by, yes, also inviting indigenous voices to be heard as to how they engage with water. And if the understanding of how we engage with water outside of us, for me, is also an invitation of how do we engage with water inside of us. Because we are made up at least of 75% of water, but every cell is made up of 99% of water. We go back to the understanding that water is a carrier, is a medium, but also has the capacity to store information. Then I want to invite you all to consider the importance of self-talk. The waters within you are still, unless you've started to change it, unless you started to heal, are still carrying potential negative self-talk that we exposed it to when we were disconnected from our true selves, when we were carrying belief systems also of our ancestors who may have been devoid of self-love, of self-care, or the realization of who they truly are, or of harsh words exchanged with someone in a fight, in a quarrel, in an argument. And so for me, the water is also a teacher as to how we can not just restore, but regenerate the understanding of a system in its wholeness. In the last years, there was such a high focus on sustainability, something to sustain itself. That's beautiful, but it's a closed system within itself. For me, the understanding of regenerative information, regenerative intelligence, regenerative leadership has to do with the understanding that everything and all is intraconnected. And if we take the seed aspect of the regen, you go back to something that has been birthed. The Genesis means birthing. So it's the implementation of a framework that allows a system to continuously thrive as and within itself in a perpetual way, connected with all that is. And for me, the ocean is that leading force, is that leading teacher, the oceans, the waters, because no matter what they've been through, no matter what they've witnessed, they have a way of reorganizing, restructuring itself within its molecular cohesiveness to somehow always purify and birth itself anew while still remaining intact and connected with all that is.
Wow. We can end this right here. That was a beautiful, beautiful way to look at and experience water, right? And water can really be one of our greatest teachers, and how much we can learn from this regenerative aspect of water, how much water actually impacts us. And when you were speaking about water and the self-talk, right, and how that affects us, it's actually the vibration, the sound that gets encoded in the water, right, that then we are holding on to if we're not undoing it. One of this teachers that I follow, Peter Crone, talks about how sound is literally what holds us back through the narratives, right? It's just sound. And yet it's like, it's those stories that we heard when we were younger, or the stories that we told ourselves about what we experienced, that gets then encoded. And it's like, once we bring that into the awareness, I think it makes it so much easier for us to undo and regenerate. So thank you for that. And I hope that whoever's listening gets a little bit of, a burst of inspiration from this, because this is really important and also simple. Right? It's profound, yet it's simple. It's like, okay, I have that power to regenerate myself and to become like water, to move like water, to allow it to heal me, and be what it is, this nourishment that we all have access to. So many beautiful lessons. I guess what we'll end on, the last question that I want, to kind of wrap up this such a rich discussion. We went in so many beautiful places, unexpected, which I'm like so happy we did, because it was just perfect. But I'm curious, we talked a lot about purpose, about consciousness, about humanity. I'm curious what you think humanity's purpose is as a whole on this planet. What are we here for as a collective?
Such a beautiful way to end this dance with you. I have a very wild theory, and I'm giving myself the permission to be super transparent right now. Some of your codes within your waters may judge me, but that's cool. So my wild theory is, and it's not just my own, it's from teachings that have been granted by wisdom keepers of indigenous elders. It's from internal memories that I could access to, and it's like a deep knowing, is that similarly as we humans, especially since the emergence of the Industrial Revolution, have at some point become so disconnected from the nature around us, from the true nature that is us. I think at some point, way earlier in the line of human existence, we became, or we were, disconnected by our true heritage and by the understanding that we as a species are definitely not alone in, you called it beautifully, symphony of creation. I will bounce back with the word universe, the united verses of creation. I think that we at some point forgot that we are members of a much bigger, vaster ocean of existence that allows, in my perception, to underline the importance of other species and other evolved beings to exist, not just to exist, but for them to be conscious stewards of all of creation, whilst we forgot that we are. And when we play as a little child with fire, as we've played the past centuries, the century before with the atomic bomb, I believe that by doing so, we are damaging the fabric of creation and of creating thus negative reverberation across the galaxies that we're not even aware of. And it comes from disconnect. The moment I am not connected with my core being, the moment I'm not connected with the divinity that is me, that is in everything, the moment I consider aspect of nature as that, because it's outside of me, I'm no longer an active, connected member of all that is. And I think for me, my wish, my intent is that we all are reawakening to our true role within a connected, cohesive cosmos. Because as we do one thing, we do everything. And I think my feeling tells me we're in for a very, very awe-provoking, astonishing ride in the next decade, where we get to unravel that we truly are not alone, and how this remembrance and this reconnection allows us to grow in our conscious sentient force of existence. I hope that makes sense. And if you all are laughing, that's cool too. Maybe you prove me wrong. This is an open conversation. But yeah, I share this with utter transparency.
I love that. And I'm so looking forward to this awe-inspiring next decade, because I think that a lot of things are going to uncover themselves for us. And just thank you so much, Alexandra, for sharing your wisdom, your grace, your thought-provoking perspectives. I know the listeners got a lot out of this, as did I. So just to end, you do so much incredible work. You talked about 2 books, a film. I know you do consultancies and work with individuals. So where can people find information about you? And if there's any other projects you want to share with everyone, please go ahead and...
Thank you so much. Wow, you truly are for me a royal bee, a queen bee. You allow me to hum with you in that so generously orchestrated offerage of your beehive and of the honey that is the outpour of your distilled wisdom. And it is an honor to have shared that space with you, that time with you, that presence with you. And my wish is, if I can plant a seed into our meli, honey, is that we get to be reminding each other along our journeys, mirroring each other, honoring each other, and our sovereignty of what we are called to bring forth into this life. As you allowed me to do this tonight with you, I would love to honor you in the same way, maybe with a different framework, maybe in Greece, maybe in the ocean, maybe planting something. We've definitely got to surf. We'll definitely got to surf. That's amazing. And hopefully plant actual seeds in the physical soil. And thank you for this beautiful question. So anybody who's willing to explore these modalities with me, you can reach my website. It's alexandralia.com. My Instagram is alexandra_lia. And I also offer every now and then seminars, and I facilitate retreats. You can personally email me. I'd be happy for you to reach out and to see what we could sing into creation, actually. Thank you so very much for having me.